thing called a Fraud 360 World Tour. We go to about 25 different cities around the world. Anything from Sydney to Tel Aviv to Toronto to Singapore. And merchants, when they see this type of thing, they get this deer in the headlights look. Which one do I go with? Which is going to win? Anybody know? Raise your hand, because I'd like to tell everybody which one's going to win. Here's the second problem they have, is their payment processor. Does their payment processor handle all these? No. Should they? Maybe. Maybe you need more than one processor. Maybe you need a different gateway. We do a lot of stuff with Braintree. They started in the mobile space. They dominate the mobile space. Who would have thought Venmo a few years ago would be as big as it is today? There's some things out there that are going to creep up, that are going to catch us by surprise, and we're going to be grabbing that tiger by the tail and hoping we get as much of that space as we can. Features and functionality. Consumers are overwhelmingly concerned with ease of use, not whatever payment type it is. It better be easy. Unfortunately, the Amazons and Apples of the world have spoiled consumers into thinking, I'm done, just deliver it to my house now. I clicked it, when's it show up? I'm not paying for shipping either. And if you have to fly it in, feel free. They have spoiled the consumer. And the rising generation, we call them the millennials, they are starting to shift stuff in a major way. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have written a check in the last 30 days? Raise your hand. Wow, a little higher than normal. That's unusual. I was in the checkout line a little while ago, and an elderly woman pulled out her checkbook. And I was annoyed. I didn't even know this woman. I'm sure she was somebody's very nice grandmother. Writing a check, and then guess what? Let her check register. Writes the register of the check with the check number. And we were like, come on, we gotta go. We don't wait very long. Convenience is gonna drive this. Mobile to mobile is a space that's taking off. Checkout abandonment rates become higher, and it becomes higher in the seconds and milliseconds. If that would have been something that I was online, on my phone or my laptop, and I saw the little wheels spinning, I would have gone somewhere else. American Express did a study. It said for every 1 second you delay the checkout, 7% abandonment rate can be had by you. And people that abandon, 68% of the time, don't come back. If you've got a brick and mortar presence with an online presence, and they've had a bad experience online, the chances of them walking into your store is 40% less. 40% less because what you did online and your payments wasn't what they wanted to see. Not because of your display, not because of your promotional circulars on Sunday, but this is becoming the driving force. Vendor support for wallets. Does your payment service provider support mobile wallets? Yes. No, I don't know. That is a shame. That is an absolute crime. If you don't know if your service provider doesn't support wallets or that they don't support wallets. It's huge. Do they offer all your needed mobile payment types? Again, yes, no, I don't know. We have more than one PSP to solve that problem. So we can beat up on merchants a little bit by saying, hey, which ones are you going to take? It's throughout the industry. If you have a specific acquirer or PSP or gateway and they don't support, let's say, Samsung Pay because they have a Samsung Pay competitor, or they don't support Chase Pay, you have to decide. What do my consumers want? That's a tough decision, too. Is fraud increasing? Well, the biggest segment of this is saying fraud is increasing in the mobile payment space. Why? Well, mobile payments have gone up dramatically. This last year, Cyber Mondays, Black Friday to Cyber Monday, we saw a 48% increase in transactions conducted on mobile devices. 48%. Anything else growing in this industry by 48%? There isn't. If you are going to use mobile checkout, mobile payments, you have to be able to tell what type of device is transacting with you. This is an area where there's been some debate as to whether it's important or not. I'll tell you right now, the debate is over. If you don't know the type of device that's transacting with you, you have a hole in your system. And I'll give you some stats here in a minute. But this is a question we ask, hey, how important is it for you to know what that device is? And 47% said very important, 24% somewhat important, but there's still a large chunk over there, somewhere around 30% that are saying, it doesn't really matter. Then we ask this question. Can you detect what mobile device it is? We're getting better, but we're not there yet. 14% said, no, we can't detect if it's a mobile device at all. almost 49% said, we can tell if it's a mobile device, but we can't tell you what type of mobile device it is. Why is that important? This is your participation portion of the presentation. Why is it important to tell what type of device it is? Yes?
The device has known vulnerabilities, it could infect the entire.
Did you hear that? He said if the device has known vulnerabilities. In other words, different devices transact differently. Different devices have different characteristics. They have different patterns. My wife and I were looking for a new refrigerator a few months ago. Walked in and they said, this refrigerator, look at it, has a big screen on the front. You didn't even have to open the door. You just look right here, and I was like, what fun is that, first of all? And if you are low on milk, it'll order it for you. I was like, that's a little freaky. What if I just put milk in the wrong place, which I always do? What if, how does that work? It was a little bit freaky, but I looked around my house. There are 27 devices in my house that connect to the internet. How many of you got? Smart TV, game player, phones, computers, iPads. What about your thermostat? All these things connect. They're considered mobile, even though thermostats don't move very much. It's considered a non-standard e-commerce mobile device. They all have patterns. I could book my vacation on my Xbox One, but I'm probably not going to. So fraudsters look for these types of things. Where are the weaknesses? They look at payment types. They look at your checkout page. How many of you have gone to your checkout page in the last 30 days and bought something? Doesn't happen very often. Do you know where the weaknesses are? Do you know where the inconsistencies? Do you know where the inconveniences are for your customers? It should be something that happens regularly. We talked a lot about specialized tools. A lot of people think, oh, I put a fraud system in a couple of years ago. That's almost obsolete if it's been that long. Sometimes specialized tools are necessary, sometimes they're not. It just depends on your transaction, who you deal with, what your normal customer looks like. But more often than not, most online merchants, online folks, overlook the importance of that mobile device being a specialized channel for doing business. And it gets overlooked. Fraudsters can pick this up pretty quickly. What are people going to be adding? I thought it was interesting. Did this come out right? Sorry. I've got a circle around here, but it's too light. I look at things like CVV and where's the other one? ABS on here somewhere. I can't tell it. But the funny thing about CVV is, we're a fraud company. We did a little bit of research. We looked at 100 million fraudulent transaction attempts. Guess what? 98.7% of all fraudulent attempts had an accurate CVV. That super secret code that nobody knows on the back of your credit card? That one? You buy on the open web, you can buy credit cards with the CVV attached. It's not really a tool, and yet it's one of the largest things used here, and people are going to continue to add it. Now, I will say from a consumer standpoint, consumer confidence. If you're asking me for that, my confidence in your website is like, oh, they want the super secret code that nobody else knows. This must be a really secure website. It does add confidence, but as a fraud tool, it's ridiculously useless. Okay? So, we've covered a lot of ground in just a couple of minutes. Some of the things that I think we need to start understanding when it comes to mobile is that mobile is a new sales channel. As soon as we start tucking it into everything we've always done, we have problems. I get to do stuff with the Secret Service, the FBI, Scotland Yard, different agencies around the world. And the funny thing starts to happen. When governments regulate things, what is the first thing fraudsters do? Go around the regulations somehow. You know, Kount invented device fingerprinting back in 1999. We patented it. We have 27 patents on device fingerprinting. We hold it worldwide. And yet we wouldn't tell anybody, all you need to do is some device fingerprint. There are 19 products on the market today that you can buy that spoof device fingerprinting. As soon as it becomes somewhat of a standard, fraudsters aren't dumb. They're very smart and they're very well networked. They're sophisticated in their fraud methods. They'll find a way around it. Use 3D Secure. Anybody use 3D Secure type technology? I can buy credit cards with 3D Secure accounts attached to it. What we did last year is no longer good for this year. I would make a recommendation, and I wholeheartedly recommend this. You know I'm from a fraud mitigation company. We'd love to do business with you. Whether you do business with us or somebody else, you should probably do a fraud audit on your system annually. You do it with your finances. You do it with your finances so you can find out, where's my weak spot? Where do I have trouble? Where's my profitability going out the window? Where am I losing money? And you do that to find out the health of your business every single year. It's as important to do that in your fraud technology and your payments technology to say, where am I being less efficient? Where's my abandonment rates? Where am I losing things because of fraud? MasterCard came out this year and said that false positives, anybody know what a false positive is? False positives cost the industry 12 times more than fraud losses. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year to stop fraud, and here's our answer. Let me run this past you. We got a couple of minutes. How many of you do business with people online in Nigeria? I hear the prince is still looking for help. Anybody here? Why not? Why don't you do business in Nigeria? I don't even know what business you do, but why? It's all fraud. So what we do is we go, too much fraud there, cut them off, we don't accept any orders there. And that is a very typical response. We start going, oh boy, we started selling gift cards. Our fraud doubled. Let's stop selling gift cards. We've had companies do that. Spotify did that. Did that for about 6 months. About a $20 million annual revenue stream for them they turned off because fraud got to be about 10%. They were being fined $100,000 a month because their fraud was out of line. So they said, just take that product out. We can't afford to sell that product anymore. Now we laugh when we go, well, we're not selling to Nigeria because there's so much fraud there. There's an easy way to stop fraud. Just stop taking orders. We don't do it in Nigeria. There's too much fraud. We just don't take orders. Companies do that, and we think that is a crime. You've got to be able to detect good orders from bad orders. And what false positives mean is you say, here's my bad order, and I'm going to put a buffer about this big on it. So anything that comes close to that, I'm just rejecting. Our data scientist, he's a funny guy. Funny in a very nerdy, mathematical, smart kind of way. He said, you know, it's like you look at fraud and you go, there's 800 criminals out there, and we're happy to lock up 10,000 people. We got the 800. There's 9,000 other people that got locked up. And we do that all the time. being able to detect good orders from bad orders, wherever they come from, whatever the fraud patterns are, is the key to helping us do what we want to do every day, and that's grow, expand. Sell more things to more people in more places. That's what we want to do. And this is one of those things that gives us a little bit of heartburn. Like I said, if you want the survey, go on our website, you can get it, or come give me a business card. We're happy to send it to you. It's very in-depth. It covers different industries. Some people are in ticketing, some people are in apparel, some people are in health and beauty, doesn't really matter. It breaks it down by about 25 different industries. What's happening in the mobile space, what you can do, what you can look forward to, and see what's happening in the industry. So I know I'm about out of time. There's got to be a couple of questions. Yes, sir.
Put that last slide back up to you.
This one?
Yes.
Yes.
The most popular adoption of fraud solutions is complete fraud platform. I never heard of that term.
Okay, let me explain what that is. I know it's kind of a funky thing, but here's what's happening. The market is doing a little bit of a shift. As little as 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of merchants said, I'll just build my own fraud system. And they went out and they bought, or they rented a device fingerprint, a geolocation tool. They bought things like that, kind of hobbled together a list of things that they would run their transactions by. A complete platform takes all those things, put them in a platform in a very methodical and intense process, so that they're not in charge of 9 different vendors putting stuff together. We couldn't think of a better way to say that. If there is, let us know, because we'd love to. But it really means it's kind of a solution that you don't have to add much to. Okay? Does that make sense? And by the way, most merchants today are going, we're getting out of the fraud detection business because it's getting difficult and costly. We just put out a white paper, buy versus build, about 4 or 5 months ago. And the costs are staggering. And then, it's the old crate and barrel. You build it, you own it. You keep it. You keep it updated, and this stuff moves pretty quickly. Thank you, good question. Yes, sir.
What about the constant head bashing and gnashing of teeth over PCI and the merchants? Where do you guys sit on PCI compliance? Is it good, bad, and different? Is it a false leader? What is it?
I will never bash it because some attempts to do things are better than none. The industry absolutely has to have, the question was, what do you think about PCI? Compliance, is it good, is it bad? What do merchants think? What's the industry think? There has to be an attempt to try and keep us safe. And so to put minimal barriers in place to say not any Tom, Dick, or Harry can open up a credit card processing thing and be okay. All right? Here's the issue that we have. Now, we've been PCI level 1 compliant for a decade. We don't even handle that material, but we did it because we felt it was important to our merchants to say, oh, they're PCI compliant. Target was PCI compliant until the day they weren't. They were PCI compliant to the highest levels of everything that you could get from MasterCard, Visa, American Express, the whole consortium of PCI. And yet they were breached. And the card brand's solution, or their answer was, well, they must not have been compliant anymore. And they weren't. There's things leaking out, being passed in and out, stuff like that. But it's a good attempt. I think we have to have some standards. But please don't rely on those standards as being the things that you need, like the CVV thing. I think, again, it's another great attempt to say, well, here's another thing that we can add, another layer, and yet the first thing fraudsters try and do is get around those things. Yes, sir.
So can you talk to a little bit about reactive versus proactive? Kount does kind of a good job in this area. I'm not very many people do that.
Sure.
Because we can be reactive all day long, but the bad guys will always be able to step ahead of you.
You bet. There are, you watch how bad guys work, and it's interesting. The industries that they go into first are the ones that are usually games, and they'll go in and they'll test all these different techniques. And one of the things, the question was, what about proactive versus reactive? There are lots of things you can do proactively to prepare yourself for things that might come down your way. Now, it's based on your industry, based on your tolerance for risk, based on your policies. If you're Nordstrom's, you're going to have a friendly fraud problem. Sorry. No two ways about it. That's your policy, that's what you want to live by, that's your brand. It's going to be an issue. But you know that up front, and you accept that. What you don't want is things to sneak by you and go, holy cow, what the heck just happened? So there are several technologies we look at. One is persona technology. I was in the military long enough to know that the first thing you take out of the battle is what? Communication. If you can't talk to each other, it's a mess. Fraudsters don't sit in their room like they used to in the 80s and just go, hey, I'm a hacker. Right? Were you a hacker? They network. They steal social security numbers from here. They steal addresses from here. They use distribution points from here. They rent IP addresses from here. They sell credit cards all over the place. There's this huge network of communication. Did you hear a couple of months ago when Alpha Bay got taken down? Anybody know what Alpha Bay is? Wow, this is huge. Jeff Sessions announced it. Unfortunately, it was also announced when some Russian thing happened too. But Alpha Bay was the largest website for fraudsters to go and exchange information and products and tools and credit cards and financial data and IDs. And the US government shut them down. Guess what happened about 20 minutes after they shut them down? They all shipped it to another website over in Denmark. Now, the fun thing about this was the Danish police had shut down this other website but didn't tell anybody. They were now manning this website, so when Alpha Bay went down and people went over there, they were like, oh, now we know who you guys are. But as soon as that happened, about 20 minutes later, another website had all that traffic coming to it. If you can pick off the network of communication, you can do a lot to proactively stop fraud. We knew when the Target breach happened. Now, we didn't know how it happened or where it happened, but I say it's something like this. You walk into your kitchen and there's 2 inches of water on the floor. You don't know where the leak came from, but you know there's a problem. When we see these hordes of data hit the market, we can almost predict somebody's going to announce a breach. We knew that Yahoo had a breach 2 years ago. We saw the data. We didn't know whose it was, where it came from, so when they announced, we were like, that's where that 500 million new files came in. And if you can look at those types of things, you can help proactively stop fraud. AI is another wonderful tool. It's a term that gets thrown around all over the place, and it is mostly thrown around as a marketing term. I'm the Vice President of Marketing. Shame on us. It is a very useful tool when done properly. If somebody's just using it in an ad campaign because it's the cool hot buzzword today, you need to look underneath the covers and see what they're actually doing with their AI. It can really change the way you look at things, and it can do it in fractions of a second, milliseconds. To look at hundreds and millions of pieces of data as that transaction is taking place, so when they say buy, you know instantly what's going to happen.